Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps to keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was 6 hours south of Anchorage, droning at FL 330 over an ocean so black it looked like a hole in the world, when the radios began to feel haunted. If you've never flown a freighter at night, imagine living inside a metronome. Everything is rhythm and routine, fuel checks on the half hour, position reports at waypoints named with jokes only cagraphers find funny, engine instruments a row of green unmoving saints. The 7478F is built for monotony and mass, 4 quiet engines, wings like cathedral rafters, an electronic checklist that scrolls the same calm prompts at the same calm pace. No passengers, no applause on landing, only a crew that knows each other too well. A handful of bunks and pallets of things people need but never see. Medical freezers, mailbags, drill heads, crates labeled in languages that roll like surf. On this leg, Anchorage to Sydney, we carried 8 ULs of express freight and 2 climate-controlled units containing research reagents. The bill of lading had extra warnings. Keep packs in high-flow fresh air. Avoid heat soaks. Log any cabin irregularities. Nothing unusual for a polar dispatcher on a tight clock. We were 5. Augmented crew for the long night. I had the left seat. Captain Marcus Mark Hale, 46, son of a Lake Michigan crop duster. In the right seat on the first half was First Officer Anna Petrova, exat from Edmonton, who never smiled on climb out and never missed a checklist. Our augmenters were FO number 2, Jared J.T. Tully, 26, good hands and too much energy, and FO number 3, Tomas Tom Velasquez. A smooth, careful stick who could draw the Pacific tracks by memory. In the upper deck rest module, the little warren of bunks behind the cockpit, slept our loadmaster Konyi Lau, a Hawaiian-born problem solver who treated the airplane center of gravity like a living pet. Hours out of Anchorage, we checked in with Anchorage Center, then with Oakland Oceanic via CPDLC, accepted our track and mock, and settled into that quiet hum that makes time elastic. Selcow ABG, the box chimed once. Confirmation that whoever watched the wide sky still knew we were here. The HF radios, usually noisy at night, were strangely clean. Sun cycles, Anna said, eyes on fuel totals. We had a nice tailwind push off the illusions. Predicted arrival at dawn plus a bit. Everything by the book. Everything ordinary right up until it wasn't. The first oddity was small. Selcow lit again. But the data link message that followed was garbled. Random characters and then a single line. All stations hold last clearance. Not unheard of. When oceanic sectors reconfigure, you get a pause. I sent a position report anyway. Our waypoint crossing timestamp and the usual estimates next, but the system refused it. A blinking MSG failed retry. Anna frowned and switched to HF2 bot Oakland Radio Polar Cargo 92 heavy position report. Only hash and a long ocean hiss replied. She tried a different frequency. Same. She tried the sat phone and it rang into emptiness. Probably a COMAD issue, I said. Let's let the box sulk and see if it clears. Copy, she said. But she wrote the times by hand, a habit from her ATC days. Her pen tapped the clipboard. Tap, tap, tap as we crossed to the next point. The horizon bled out behind us and the stars were so bright they made their own faint auroras in the glass. At the 6th hour, the second oddity arrived. JT came back from his rest break and hovered by the jump seat, a silhouette against the aisle light. You two getting anything on VHF-3? He asked. I'm picking up weird chatter like everyone keying at once. Could be cross-oopling. Let me see, I said. I pulled up 121.5 on the spare. Guard the international distress and stupidity frequency. Normally a low murmur of bored pilots. Tonight it was a snarling hive. Clipped transmissions bled into one another. Remain clear of negative. Negative, get off the if you can hear me. Rolled to then nothing but carrier and a low uneven breathing that made the hair on my arm stand up. Anna turned her head slowly. That's global. I'm going to isolate 3, I said and put it on the speaker. We listened. A calm female voice broke through for a moment. All stations, this is followed by a digital scream of heterodynes, several mics stuck open, a long moan of an engine winding down, and then another voice, breathless, urgent. Don't go to approach. They're cut off by hand slapping a switch. Then static again. Then a man measured British. Any airframes with fuel and night capability. Divert to oceanic holding. Do not expect controlled airspace. Repeat. Do not expect. Drowned once more by a dozen other broken pleas. JT's boundless energy drained out of his face. What the hell is that? Anna reached for the ICS comm page like it might offer a different answer. Satcom calms down. Oakland radio not answering. Guard is Bedham. She blew out a slow breath. Okay, we keep flying. We fly the airplane. We moved under an unspoken agreement deeper into procedures that had saved pilots in worse mysteries. If the world goes quiet, you revert to the old rules. Fly the heading, fly the mock, fly the plan until it breaks, and then you make a new plan. I called back to the rest module using my calmed captain voice. Tom Cone, copy flight deck. A pause. The interphone crackled and Khan's easy tenor filled the dark loud and clear. Cap, you two good? All good down here, he said. Tom's bagging Z's. Okay, we're having some comms oddities. I want the cockpit door kept closed and latched. If anyone knocks, I want a voice check on the interphone before we open. SOP, you got it. And Coyote, can you go ahead and pull the quarantine kit out of the big red locker? Just stage it. Don't use it. Just stage it. Another pause, slightly longer. Copy, quarantine kit staged. He didn't ask why. Loadmasters understand that sometimes the ocean changes shape underneath you. We ran a fuel check. Totalizer matched the nav log within 100 kilos. While inside error, we were carrying no meld items. All 4 electrical generators steady, hydraulic pressures perfect. Bleed air temps nominal. Packs on high. We'd already set recirculation fans to off per the reagent carriage notes, pushing a near-constant stream of fresh filtered air through the upper deck. We double-checked the fume procedures all the same. Oxygen masks within reach, smoke goggles half unclipped. If you can't trust the sky, you trust your hands and checklists. At 6 hours 20, Tom slid into the jump seat. Hair flattened from the bunk. Eyes clear. You called Boss.com's anomalies. Global Guard is ugly. Sit, listen. We might need to re-rack the duty schedule. He strapped in, listened for a minute, and his face turned grave. I heard something like this on a HF net out of Honolulu before I went down. Thought it was just night skip. Honolulu, Anna repeated. So not just Oakland. Tom nodded. Heard someone say medical status unknown at Kona. Then a higher-up voice cut them off. We didn't say the word yet. We didn't say any name for chaos. We just flew. The minutes later, the third oddity knocked, literally. There was a soft thud on the cockpit door. The kind of careful rap one adult gives another in the middle of the night. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats. Anna and I traded the same look. JT's in the galley heating his 3rd coffee. Tom's right here. Keone said he was with the quarantine kit. The door camera showed only a rectangle of upper deck carpet and steel. No feet. The interphone chimed. Flight deck. I answered and put it on speaker, a breath. Then JT's voice flat too slow. Mark, can I come in? JT, why are you on the interphone? I asked. You're 30 FT from us. Door's locked, he said as if explaining the design of the sun. I shot Tom a finger and he moved quiet as a cat toward the camera control. He panned the lens down. A sliver of someone's shoulder lay just out of frame. No uniforms in the camera's limited field, only the upper corner of a black t-shirt sleeve. Voice check, I said, and made my tone normal. Say our oceanic track letter, please. He paused too long. Track Juliet. We were on track Zulu. The only person on the airplane who could have misremembered that was joking. JT didn't sound like he was joking. How you feeling, JT? I asked. You sound tired. He began. And then a quick whisper like his hand covered the mic. Through the door we heard his breath. Fast, wet, not just tired. He knocked again, very gentle, like he was sorry. Open, please. Anna's hand hovered near the door handle. I shook my head once. She put both hands on her thighs and stared straight ahead. JT, I said carefully, I want you to go back to the rest module and sit on the lower bunk. Can you do that for me? Silence. Then the kind of soft laugh people make when they're trying not to embarrass themselves. I don't think you should see me right now, he said. My nose, there's a lot, it's just allergies. I think the packs are too dry. The interphone clicked off and his footsteps drifted away. No one had to say it. We'd all seen the same news in the last week, the way headlines kept inching from rumor to emergency. Cities taking precautions because of a flu that was an only flu. Hospitals in Europe asking people not to wait in triage. Flights diverted because of crew illness, a phrase airlines use when they don't want anyone to panic. We had laughed once at a meme comparing cabin crew PPE to astronaut suits. We had sanitized our hands and not thought about what it meant. I'll go, Tom said, unbuckling. No, I said, it could be a nosebleed. He gets them in winter, Tom said. But his eyes flicked toward the door camera at that bare sleeve. He was thinking what I was, that JT had never in 6 months of rosters with us spoken that slowly, that he was the most eager guy on the crew. The last one who would stand in a hall and knock softly like a stranger unsure of the apartment number. Cone, I said into the interphone. Status? I heard rustling. His voice came back lower now, wearing a shape I'd never heard on him. Cap, I'm in the rest module with the door latched. JT is in the galley. He's not right. He's got a mask on, but he's just standing. He said he needed tissues. He put his hand on the freezer unit like he was checking the temperature and just left it there staring. I asked if he was okay and he said, I didn't like my dreams. He's not responding to normal small talk. A low click meant he'd moved closer to the door, whispering, Cap? He scratched his neck through the mask until he had to go wash his hand. I gave him gloves. He took one and put it in his pocket. I don't think he's tracking. Anna set the pack controls to high. Roach fans confirmed off and cranked the outflow valve just a hair to keep fresh air streaming. The cabin altitude stayed a steady 7,000 feet. Our oxygen masks sat in their wells like promises. Okay, I said. Okay, stay in the module, keep the door latched. You have a medical kit in there. Yes, if he asks to come in, tell him you're not dressed by time. If he tries to force the door, be loud. Copy. I felt for the first time that night a thread of real isolation pulled tight across my chest. A 4-engine airplane at night is usually a citadel. It's also a long aluminum building in which you cannot escape anyone. We were 2 rooms in a hallway from someone who had breathed the same air for 6 hours and now sounded like a stranger wearing our friend's voice. Fuel, I said, and hated how the word shook. Anna answered like I needed to hear a metronome again. Fuel remaining 16.8 metric. Burn on schedule. Critical point for a return crossed. Nearest runways within 2 hours. Midway likely closed. Wake active sometimes. Johnston Atoll officially abandoned. PPG too far east. Honolulu to the northeast, but if what we heard on guard was true, I nodded. The simple arithmetic. Turn north toward civilization and maybe meet whatever had snarled the radios. Turn south and west toward small dots of concrete and black ocean. We couldn't just aim for Australia and hope. You do not drift across the Pacific with fingers crossed. You pick a place you can actually reach and then you make the airplane and your crew survive the interim. It's your leg. I told Anna, you fly. I'll talk and manage. She swallowed, then put her hands on the yoke like it was the only solid thing in the universe. My leg. We declared not to a frequency that would hear us, but to the logbook and to ourselves. We were diverting. We would aim for a place with enough runway and enough emptiness and hope that either the lights worked when we got there, or the moon and our landing lamps could write a runway shape on something flat. I built holds and alternates like stacking blocks. For terrain and range and fuel, the most practical option was an unlawly one. Johnston Atoll, an abandoned U.S. military site a few degrees north of the equator, 2 to 3 of the way to nowhere. Its runway long enough when new, marginal now, but there. The briefing pages buried in the EFB still existed. Dusty PDFs with footnotes about FOD and wildlife management. No tower, no ATIS coordinates that our FMS could fly to like a lover's address. I punched in PJ-ON as a custom field with the runway coordinates and extended the center line 10 mi to make my own airsoft final. Frequencies empty, Nevada's likely dead. But the Earth doesn't move under a runway, not much. Latitude and longitude stay faithful. If the pavement existed, we could find it. Distance? I asked. 820 nautical, Anna said. 2 hours 20 at long-range cruise. Fuel on landing. 7.9. We can bias for holding, but every minute is risk. Bias for speed. I said fresh air. Get there. We set a direct. Nothing like the feeling of a magenta line drawing purpose across black. The autopilot rolled us gently toward our new future. Tom leaned forward. Do we tell him? He asked, meaning JT. That we're diverting. It might agitate him. Before I could answer, the cockpit door's inner bolts thunked with a sound I only heard during maintenance. The handle quivered. It was gentle, but it was the wrong kind of gentle. JT, I called, forcing my voice to a normal pitch. You okay out there, a scuffing? The camera showed the lower corner of his sleeve again, the fabric darker now. He didn't answer. The handle stopped trembling. Then faintly, the smell of something metallic bled through the door's imperfect seals. Not a lot, just enough for the animal part of my brain to say not good. "'Kay," I said into the interphone. "Update." No response. "Keon." The interphone clicked, and when it did, it transmitted a small sound that made me want to throw up. Cone, taking one quiet breath too close to the mic and then holding it as if he'd seen something and decided even the sigh of air would betray him. His whisper came careful around each syllable. He's sitting at the top of the stairs, Cap. He put his head against the hatch and he's just listening. Can you secure the rest module doors from the inside? Yes, I heard the soft jack of the privacy pin. I've got the med kit and an O2 cannula. If you stay in there, I said, if he becomes violent, use the fire extinguisher like we trained. Aim at the chest, short bursts, back away and close the door. There are stories crews tell when they've had too many nights like this. Honey badger mythologies about turning galleys into fortresses. You hope they stay myth. You sharpen your voice until it cuts cleanly between fear and action. Tom slid back into his harness and strapped in hard. Boss, we need to think about cockpit integrity if he flips. I nodded. We do not open this door. We do not debate that. We fly the airplane. For an hour, the ocean was a whispering infinite thing, and we became the core of a small, determined universe. We ran every relevant checklist and then a few that made us feel better. We tuned every HF and VHF freak that might hold a friendly voice and found only bag of snakes guard, and once a lifeguard high-low out of Micronesia calling a boat that didn't answer. We reran the fuel. We plotted equal time points like we were teaching an exam. We nudged the pressurization to a slight positive delta to keep fresh air on the flight deck and rear fans off everywhere. We sipped water through our masks. We spoke softly. We listened to JT's footsteps move and stop and move again like a slow metronome in the hall. At 7:52, the SATCOM chimed one more time, and this time a voice arrived, plain and ragged, riding the empty sky. Any airframes inbound wake. Midway, Johnston, Canton, anyone reading this medical advisory. If you have onboard crew showing a pause, a careful word choice. Altered behavior, secure your flight deck. Do not attempt to restrain without protective equipment. There is a risk of airborne transmission in confined spaces. Increase ventilation. Keep physical distance. Protect your eyes. If you must land at an uncontrolled field, do not expect ground support. Assume no runway lights. Use your landing lights for runway identification only. Be prepared for obstacles. This is the voice faltered and then returned with the discipline. This is Civil Air Patrol Forward Element from Honolulu. Call sign Trailblazer. We are broadcasting until the generator runs out. Godspeed. We said nothing for a long time. There's a point where fear becomes a tool and fits your hand like pliers. That voice gave us shape. It gave our plan teeth. Approach briefing, I said at last. and let the normal words make a normal world. Johnston ATL runway 32 preferred if wind is light from the east as usual. No instrument approaches. Arnav unavailable. Assume degraded GPS but use it for situational awareness. We will build a 3-degree long path to threshold using manual vertical speed and PIP if available. Don't count on PPI. No tower, no ATC, possibility of wildlife or debris on runway. Longitudinal slope negligible. Runway likely unlit. We will do a high pass at 500 FT to confirm surface condition and lighting status. If clear and stable, we'll circle in full stop. If not, we climb back to 10, burn in a hold until dawn and try again. Decision altitude for the first pass is our own gut. Minimum fuel to continue to any other island is a fairy tale. This is our spot. Questions? No, Anna said, as calm as if we were briefed for Sydney and Kavok. Config, I said. Plan flaps 25 with auto brakes max. No reverse above idle until we validate surface. We'll roll deep and use reverse as needed. Spoilers armed. APU not needed, but we can start it just in case we lose any engine gen on rollout. So we keep packs up. Good. I said, Tom, you're the third set of eyes. Call anything weird. We keep the landing lights off until short final. No need to attract attention or blind ourselves. Then click them on for runway ID. We will land this airplane with the grace we were taught. Copy, Tom said. The island rose on the FMS long before it rose in the window. The magenta line thickened. Then the little dashed runway extended center line appeared, as if the airplane had drawn hope into the world. The moon, a toothpick of silver, gave just enough contrast to the sea that breakers near the reef showed white. The shape of the atoll revealed itself as a long blur of darkness against slightly different darkness, then wonderfully a line, something straight where everything else curved. A runway is a man-made miracle for the same reason a hymn is. Order inside the chaos. Traffic sweep, I said, and punched the landing lights to pulse for 3 seconds, then off. If anyone was there, they'd see us. If anything on the runway would reflect, we might catch it. Nothing responded. I pass, Anna said, and eased the nose slightly down. The VNAV glide slope I'd faked with a 3-degree path tickled the diamond. Airspeed nice, ground speed nail still. As we crossed the beach at 500 FT, I caught my first full view of runway 32. The black ribbon cut the atoll like a scalpel. The runway lights were praise any god that listens. Dimly alive, a few decades-old bulbs ghosting along the edges. Less like a runway and more like a constellation that got confused. They were uneven, intermittent, but enough a usable sketch. The surface itself looked whole. A few wind-blown patches of sand kissed the midline. No big puddles, no visible vehicles, no deer. Nothing but possibility of 1,000 gulls roosting where they shouldn't and moving at the worst time. Runway identifiable, Tom said, voice tight. Surface appears intact. No obstructions observed. Lights, I call them a whisper. Copy? Anna said, already turning us wide into a left downwind that put water under our right wing and the island. A clean, thin presence under the left. She lowered the gear early to avoid any surprises. The 4 trucks coming down with their familiar heavy thunks. Flaps built a house out of the air. 5, 10, 20, 25. I looked at my hands and they were steady. I looked at the engine instruments and they were a hymn. I looked at the door camera and saw only the empty carpet in the lower corner of that sleeve. Now darker still, like a ghost had decided to wear cotton. Final, she said, rolling out with the nose pointed at the insistently straight thing in a bent world. Landing checks, I said. We ran them. I clicked the landing lights on steady now because the moment for hiding had passed. Our beams lanced down and drew the runway into better focus. Bright triangles skimming forward. Speed's good, Tom called. Sync 10,000 reducing stabilized, I said. Stabilized, Anna echoed, and her hands held a world on exactly 3 degrees. At 200 FT, the poppy, miracle of miracles, showed 2 whites, 2 reds. At 100, the threshold streamer fluttered in our slipstream. At 50, the runway rose up to meet us like it missed us. At 30, Anna held just a breath of flare. At 20, I whispered, don't chase it. At 10, the power came to idle, and the mains kissed concrete with a firmness I'd pay money to feel again if I lived to be 80. A fool, spoiler slammed. Auto brakes grunted. The idle reverse whir was a cat's purr. We rolled and rolled, the old runway lights slipping past in time with my pulse. At 80 knots, I called manual and Anna eased the tiller. At 60, I brought the reversers up just a bit more and felt 1,000 invisible hands on the airflow. At 40, we were committed to the far end, and that was fine because the far end had nothing but more night. We exited at a faded stub and found ourselves on a taxiway that might have seen a tractor last year. I could smell salt through the air conditioning. I could hear faintly the sound of water striking reef. I could hear another sound too, a soft tapping from the cockpit door as if someone had just realized we'd done a thing and wanted to be let in. "Stop," I said, and Anna set the brakes. Parking checklist not yet complete. "We hold, this is not over." We were on the ground. The problem was now smaller, defined by the size of an island and the dimensions of a plane. But it had not gone away. The world outside might be empty. The world inside contained the unknown. "Post-landing," I said, and we ran the checklist to the point where it told us to call ground. There was no ground, there was only us. The lights along the runway flickered more now, perhaps insulted to be used. The battery buses were steady. The packs kept humming. Fresh air holding court. "Keone," I said, keying the interphone, "we're down." Silence, then a breath. "I hear you," he said. JT stood up when we touched down. He put his hand on the rest module door handle. He didn't turn it. He's humming something. A little tune. Can you get eyes on him? I don't want to open the privacy latch. I made a choice. You make 1,000 minor ones before a major one, and each teaches you how to live with your hands. "Tom, you're with me," I said, and my voice felt like a tool. "Anna, you have the airplane. If we don't come back in 5, you shut down, you start the APU, you blow the elevator hydraulics, and you turn this bird into a steel egg. You do not open this door. You understand me?" Her jaw clenched. "Understood, Captain." I pulled on my quick dawn mask and goggles. Tom did the same. We checked that the cockpit fire extinguisher was charged, argon, non-residue, and that we had a handful of cargo straps coiled like leashes. We took the crash axe and put it somewhere we could reach it without showing it. I cracked the door latch. The pressure in the cockpit equalized with a soft cough. For a second, the corridor looked like every other night, beige and stainless, scuffed by 1,000 coffee carts. Then my eyes took in the small details. Smear on the wall at the shoulder height. The first aid kit torn open and Band-Aid wrappers like snow. A tissue on the floor with a dark center. A smell of copper coins and a slightly sweet note like hot plastic. I forced my breathing slow inside the mask. "JT," I called, and my voice sounded both too loud and too small. "Buddy." He was at the top of the rest module stairs back to us, head tilted as if he were listening to music through the door. He wore his surgical mask like a superstition. His right hand hung at his side. In his left, he gripped the privacy pin, rolling it on the pad of his thumb as if testing how it touched his skin. "Don't come closer," he said without turning around. And his voice was exactly JT's, except there was no energy left in it at all. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to mess up your landing." "You didn't," I said, keeping my tone conversational as the dead. "We're safe on the ground at Johnston Atoll. We're going to sit here, let the engines cool, and then we'll figure out our next move." He laughed, a single cough of a sound. "Johnston," he said. "I went down a rabbit hole about that place once. Runway built to burn bad stuff. Birds everywhere." He pressed his forehead against the door. "I am not right." "Tell me how," I said, and Tom stood behind me with the extinguisher at his thigh, breathing exactly in sync with my own. He took a breath that sounded like a leak in a plastic bag. "I woke up and my dreams were still happening," he said softly. I could hear like a radio but inside my head. People talking and none of them were here. And then my nose started and I couldn't think. I tried to read the freezer temp and the numbers wouldn't stay put. I wanted to ask Keon to hold my hand and then I remembered I'm not 6. "You're not," I said. "You're part of my crew." "Yeah," he whispered like that was a word you could live inside. But I'm also a door you shouldn't open. He finally turned his head enough that I could see his mask in the cheekbone above it. There were scratches there, shallow and red, like someone had dragged a comb. He blinked at us like the air was thick. His eyes glinted normal and wrong at the same time. No horror movie cataracts. Just the kind of shine you see in a fever. I swallowed the dozen urgent things my fear wanted to make me say. I chose the ones that mattered. Okay, we're going to bring you a mask with a little oxygen, and we're going to give you some water. We're going to keep the air moving. We're going to ask you to sit down on the floor right there and lean your back against the wall. Deal? He blinked again, slower. Yeah, he said, deal. He slid down the wall until his back hit the carpet with a soft sigh. He set the privacy pin down gently like it was fragile. He looked at his hands as if unsure what they were for. Tom, I murmured, and he passed me the small O2 bottle with a non-rebreather mask. I checked the flow, then eased it toward JT along the carpet, stopping 6FT short. You put that on. Okay, fresh air. It'll help. He reached for it like a man who had once known what hands were and was relearning. I looked at Ka through the rest module peephole, a little circle of glass, one eye wide and steady. I held up a hand, 5 fingers. He nodded once. 5 minutes, language makes do. We did not restrain, JT, we did not grab. We kept the corridor between us and the cockpit door clear. We made a barricade from the meal cart and a tie-down strap. Not to trap him, but to create a visual boundary for all of us. We opened the forward service door to the safety latch to pull a thread more of wind through the airplane, and the night smelled like tide pools and old concrete. In my headset, the instrument panel clicked its small clicks. An airplane with its engines off makes other sounds like a sleeping animal's slow heart. When we were back behind the cockpit door with the latch engaged and the deadbolt set, my legs shook for the first time. Anna looked up. How bad? He's lucid enough to understand. I said he's symptomatic. We'll keep distance and air. We'll wait for dawn. Dawn is 2 hours, she said, looking at the horizon as if Will could summon it faster. What about fuel? We have enough to run packs and APU through dawn and after. I said, we're fine. We were not fine, but we were alive and on concrete, and we had a plan small enough to hold in human hands. That counts as fine when the alternative is ocean. We used the time to become sailors in a harbor with no charts. We set the APU and transferred the electrics with care of a jeweler. We shut down engines 1 and 4 to save cycles and kept 2 and 3 in a post-shutdown cool soak in case we had to move past. We brought up every exterior light we could without turning our airplane into a beacon. We scanned the runway for movement and saw only a few birds lift and settle like smoke. At H+931, the eastern horizon palled into the kind of soft gray that feels like forgiveness. The island took on edges. Scrub bushes became scrubs. Old buildings became charred rectangles. The windsock on the far end hung like a tired flag. The sea changed clothing from black silk to dull steel. The runway lights, as if embarrassed by the sun, went out one by one until the edges were only white paint. We heard a rustle on guard, a scratch, and then the British voice again, thinner. If any airframes made it to Johnston, Midway, or Wake overnight, set a light signal at either end of the strip. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. If you are in need of medical supplies, we have a boat resupply plan for daylight hours. A beat. If you have symptomatic crew, isolate and do not attempt to restrain if you can avoid it. The illness, he chose the word carefully, affects cognition and impulse control. Keep patients calm, hydrated, cool. Protect yourselves. We are learning. Do not give up. I flashed our landing lights in the pattern he'd asked for. It felt both ancient and new. Morse for an airframe the size of a church. Keone, I said. Status. He answered quickly now, his voice steady again because light erases some demons. He's asleep, cap, mask on, breathing slow. I've got him a cargo blanket so he's not on the carpet. He asked me before he drifted off to tell his sister he was sorry about the canoe. I didn't ask. I said, okay. Good man, I said, mouth tight. Keep your mask on. We'll sort the rest. Anna pointed toward the south end of the runway. A figure stood there on the shoulder. Small, a dot against the concrete. They held something that flashed sunlight in 3 quick blinks. 3 slow, 3 quick. I blinked back with our lights. The figure lifted a hand, then retreated into the bush, cautious as a deer. Not alone, not entirely abandoned. A surreal comfort. We taxied very slowly toward a concrete hardstand with old tie-downs sunk like teeth. We set the parking brake and shut down the remaining engines. The airplane clicked as it cooled. The ocean made its slow, patient sound. On the table, the paper navlog lay open to a headwind we no longer had. I wrote a note across it in block print. Landed bound 32 Dawn crew hail Prova Velasquez Lau Tuli. Symptoms. Tuli altered. Air on, door secure. Looking for help. We donned masks and goggles again because daylight doesn't change the size of a virus, and unlatched the cockpit door. The corridor felt smaller. JT still slept chin to chest, the O2 mask fogging a little with each breath. He looked very young like that. Keon sat cross-legged 6 FT away, arms resting on his knees, a surgical mask properly over his nose, eyes red-rimmed but calm. Good job, I said. I've been on workboats with worse nights, he said, and smiled without humor. He'll need fluids when he wakes. We'll get them into him, Tom said. We'll keep him quiet. I looked out the side window at the runway edge, at the scrub beyond, at the old towers and newer scars. You could fly a plane 1,000 times, and still the earth on the ground surprises you. I pictured the island's coordinates on a globe, a little dot in grid lines, a small certainty. I pictured a world where people used to come here to burn things that shouldn't exist and then leave. Now we'd come to keep something else from burning us. We would make a camp inside a 747. We would ration water we could condense from air, charge handhelds on the ship's battery buses, signal the sky with landing lights like an old ship's lamp. We would keep the air flowing and hands clean and eyes protected. We would not let fear tell our hands what to do, and we would wait for whomever sent that Morse, because people who send light into the morning do not do it without intent. I sat in the left seat one more time and ran my hand along the worn, soft edge of the yoke. Isolation, I said quietly. Not to the crew, but to the cabin I'd lived inside for half my life. Forced decisions. The airplane made a soft creak as if acknowledging a truth between old friends. Outside, a bird called Curious and then was quiet. We'd come down to a place that wasn't on anyone's vacation list, with radios that were more ghost than friend, with a crew that was 1 man altered and 4 people absolutely present. We were exactly where we had to be, which is the only definition of safe that mattered. The ocean lay patient on all sides. The sky grew brighter. Somewhere beyond that bright edge, other crews were making their own small havens and other unfinished mornings, turning concrete and aluminum and skill into something like hope. Okay, I said loud enough for all of us, here's the plan. And while I laid it out, what we do for water, how we keep JT calm, how we'd trade watches so no one ever opened a door alone, I could feel the story of the night sliding into place behind us. Not as horror, but as a chain of choices you survive by making. We were cargo people after all. We bring things through the dark to the place they need to be. Today, that thing was us. Tomorrow, with luck, it might be the first box of help. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.